We could go in so many directions to describe this one. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by and, of course, being here for Super Bowl 50 whatever. I no longer look at or read those Roman numerals. So whatever it's been, 1967 was the first one, around 57. But the word that comes to mind for me is the word that was being discussed and bantied about between Jim Nantz and Tony Romo right after the game, after the game-winning touchdown pass from one Patrick Mahomes, and that's dynasty. There are so many different definitions to dynasty. I don't necessarily have one off the tip of my tongue, but that is a dynasty. And if that is not a dynasty in NFL terms, then few exist. It's one of the best runs of NFL excellence of performance of results that we've seen in years and years and years and years and years. Of course, the most recent example, and maybe the all-time example, is Tom Brady and Bill Belichick's New England Patriots. All right, folks, we will take your calls and questions, comments, everything that you've got for us post Super Bowl. This is the Voice of College Football. Yes, this is the Voice of College Football, but I've seen an NFL game or two or three, or probably more than most. All right, so we will get to it. And that was fun. That was the most fun I've had watching the NFL in quite some time, especially once it got down to the nitty-gritty in the fourth quarter. I believe that San Francisco was the team that for the first quarter, certainly, and maybe even beyond that up until halftime, was the better football team. However, they did not take advantage of field position. They did not take advantage of Kansas City mistakes. Both teams made, of course, their fumble mistakes and penalty mistakes. San Francisco had a couple drives that were halted by their left tackle, Trent Williams, but they controlled the line of scrimmage. And they held Kansas City without any scoring until late in the first half, I believe. And so San Francisco had the opportunity to break out. They failed to do so, and it cost them a world championship. So San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan has lost two in two trips, and both to the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, 3-1, at least Andy Reid with Kansas City. All right, let's get to the call-in lines, and here we go. Super Bowl, whatever it is. It is 2024. We got Jeffrey on the line. Jeffrey, what's going on?
Hey, Mark, Super Bowl 58. Wow. I mean, I picked Kansas City to win. I mean, I have nothing against Kansas City, honestly. I didn't really care because I like Patrick Mahomes. I like Andy Reid. It didn't really matter. But we talked about Swift, we talked about all that. And I was like, 49ers haven't won in a long time. And I know why people didn't want them to win either. Because if the 49ers won, then they would have passed several teams for, getting another Super Bowl. It would have been the all-time lead or whatever, tied for the all-time lead. I get that. You don't want to pass. I think they would have passed the Cowboys or whatever. But still, a lot of people did want the 49ers to win. So I picked the Chiefs because of Mahomes. But I kind of wanted the Niners to win, even though I didn't really care too badly. But, oh, my goodness. You cannot give Mahomes that many opportunities to win a game. You just can't do it. They had multiple chances, like you said, all that field position, all that opportunity they had in the early portion of the game that they just squandered. And to me, the play that just blew everything up was when the ball hit the 49ers player's foot. It hit the foot. I mean, you think about it, Mark. You can play that game 100 times, and that would never happen again on a punt, right? It hits the foot, and then guy tries to get it. He doesn't get it. McLeod, he can't get it, and then the Chiefs score next play. That turned the tide in the game.
We can look at any close championship game in any sport, and we'll stick to the Super Bowl. And a lot of people will call it sour grapes, but that's why we're here, is to discuss the twists and turns and what could have happened. Yes, that could have been San Francisco's world championship, of course, but they didn't take advantage. And there are breaks within the game that I will call, even though I don't believe in luck, they are lucky circumstances. So I'm not going to go through that explanation right this second, but that's lucky for Kansas City. Well, they took advantage. And Yeah, Patrick Mahomes, you need to put the ball in the end zone. You need to take advantage of field position. You need to take advantage of when you're the better team along the line of scrimmage. San Francisco failed to do that. Also, I'm not going to promote myself as some defensive genius. I do think that San Francisco, on those last couple drives, they started to make very obvious blitz calls where Mahomes just knew, okay, here's the blitz. Boom. The blitz is coming. There it is. It's right from there. And he's going to throw it. What's the, tenet number one of facing a blitz? You just throw it to the spot where the blitz is coming from, because that's where they lack defenders. And he just burned them just about every time.
Yeah, one of the worst ones that they blitzed on was the pass to Rashee Rice across the middle of the field. It kind of reminded me of the Colorado State game, where you kept running the crossing route over and over again, and it kept working. But yeah, I mean, it was too easy. And obviously Moody with the blocked extra point, that played a role as well. And I mean, at the end of regulation, Rashee Rice wide open. He went off on Mahomes because wide open, but you don't want to throw it across the middle of the field because then the time could run out if you don't get it. But it was wide open. Mahomes just didn't see it. And then it goes to overtime. But then Purdy, if he has just a little bit more time, Jennings is wide open in the end zone, but he couldn't get it to him. They settle for 3, and then the rest is history. Mahomes goes down the field, wins the game. But it's like so many things. Just one play, one thing could have went the other way. This game's easily won by the 49ers. And I will say it once and I'll say it again. And I know tons of people disagree that I've said it, that have heard me say it. The 49ers were the better team. They were. On both sides of the ball overall, they were the better team. By how much? I'm not saying it's significant, but they were. But it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, the Chiefs won the game. And Mahomes is the better quarterback. And sometimes that's all that matters. And you just a couple things bounce your way. And the fact he's been there before. And that was enough. That's why I picked them to win barely. I had to be in 28-24 Chiefs. I said Mahomes going to do a game-winning drop, which ended up happening. But the whole team as a whole, the 49ers had the better team. But it just didn't matter.
I assume that Mahomes has been named the MVP. That's the obvious choice.
I didn't even see it.
He should be the MVP, I would think. But I was going to say that if anybody should be under consideration, it would be Chris Jones. I don't know how many plays he altered. He took the Kansas City defense off the field, and he's done it the entire playoffs. He's a great player. Of course, he's not going to get the MVP, but and Mahomes does deserve the MVP. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve the MVP, but yeah, it's history and it's a dynasty by most interpretations. I would like to hear if anyone would refute that. Certainly, I'm up for that debate. And he's looking for more, and he's only whatever he is, 28 years old, something like that.
Yeah, he's young. I mean, to your point, like with Chris Jones, yeah, he was the one that impacted the play where Purdy could have thrown to Jennings for the touchdown. But yeah, he was fantastic. But on the flip side, if the 49ers had won, then I think that McCaffrey should have won MVP, but it might have gone to Purdy. I don't know who would have been in that regard. But yeah, it's usually the quarterback. It's never like the defensive guys or the running back. But it is what it is. It's always usually a quarterback award these days. But, I mean, you mentioned dynasty, and I think that's the biggest thing because I remember, like, I was little when Tom Brady was, like, already – he was starting to win. He won a couple already. And like, I just remember everybody I talked to, which I don't live in the right area for, Patriots fandom in the country, but – like, everybody hated him. It's like, I can't stand Brady. I'm getting sick of him always winning. He's always there. And it's starting to happen now with Patrick Mahomes. And I can even feel it with me. I like Mahomes, but it's like, no, I don't want this to happen. I don't want it to be a dynasty now. Like, no, it's the next Brady. I mean, I like Mahomes. I like the Chiefs. And then with Swift, it's just like everybody's just anti-Chiefs right now. Like, everybody is. Unless you are a Swift fan or Chiefs fan. I just think it's hilarious because, I mean, and even, like, I don't know if you saw, like, now people are mad at Kelce because of the Andy Reid altercation where he pushed him a little bit. People are mad at him. So I don't know. Like, it's just now the Chiefs, they've got the target on their back. They've won 3. It's the new dynasty. It's official. Like, they're following up what Brady did with all the guys, Randy Moss, Edelman, Amendola. all the defense players they have, Belichick. Like it's a repeat here. We're doing it again. Andy Reid's getting a contract extension. He's in it for the long haul now. People think he's going to retire, but they claim he's getting a contract extension, which you never know. Saban got one and he retired. But the level of Chief hate around the country is just going up by the second. The more they win.
It is. People get sick of winners, but they've added a lot of fans, I'm sure. So some people gravitate to, I want to root for a winner. I want to root for the dynasty. So I'm sure those people are out there. I don't know where they are. I personally don't know any Chiefs fans who weren't Chiefs fans before. I know some Chiefs fans from different parts of the country, and they were Chiefs fans a long time ago. So I will credit them for being Chiefs fans when they were losing in the playoffs and not going anywhere pre-Mahomes. But I think most people get sick of whoever, and they're sick of Patrick Mahomes, even though he's likable. I've got no issues with him. I don't, and like you, I started out watching this game. I could care less who won. Don't care, just want to watch the game. And although late in the game, sometime in the fourth quarter, I started to lean. Yeah, I want San Francisco to win.
Yeah, I know. That's how I felt. Like, I didn't care. But then the longer it went, I'm like, come on, Niners. Come on. Get it done so we don't have to deal with this. But it's like, I know people are probably like furious at me in chat right now. But, I mean, it's just the way it is. It's like a natural gravitation. I mean, Kobe Bryant said it best. They hate the great ones. But there's a lot of reasons here why people are getting frustrated with the Chiefs. It's not just that they're winning. Because, I mean, if it was just the winning, I think that it wouldn't be as bad. But there's just a lot of other factors. I mean, people don't like when Kelce's like, oh, we're an underdog. Nobody believed in us. And again, we talked about that before. I picked you to win, Kelce, the last 2 years. So many people did. We're believing in you. I mean, now no one wants you to win anymore except Chiefs fans, but like legitimately no one's like doubting you, but it gets frustrating because I remember like I had some family members that just loathed Brady. Once he won the third, fourth, when I was a little kid, and they were like, I hate Brady. I want him to lose. I never want him to win again. And then it would get to the end of the game and then he would win again and they would just lose it. I'll never forget when the Eagles beat him with Nick Foles. It was like hallelujah. They were just like so happy. Like Nick Foles got it done. It's proven that he can be beaten. And then with the 28-3 game with Matt Ryan, that was just unbelievable. Like he's losing 28-3. His reign of terror is over. Then he comes back and wins the thing. And it's just what happens though. And I like Brady too. I it is hilarious. Like in private chat, Jackson says, Kelce, I mean, 100%. Like, that was not good with Reid. I 100% agree. And I just think, like, people are now finding things to hate against the Chiefs. They're just, like, stockpiling these things. Like, this is why I don't like them. But, I mean, congratulations, though. Besides all that, congratulations. I don't know, like, I mean, people are wondering how much longer, like, with Swift Kelce, is it going to, like, is this going to be till next year? Like, are we still doing this next year and beyond? I don't know. But, like, I mean, good for them. Good for Chiefs fans. It was a great game, and that's about all you can ask for.
Yeah, good for all of them. I don't have any issues with any of them. Andy Reid seems like a great guy. I don't know the guy, so I'm not going to vouch for him being some amazing person or anything, but he seems like a decent guy. Pat Mahomes seems like a decent guy. Again, I don't know. None of us know. Travis Kelce, what he did on the sideline with Andy Reid, thought that was, for a veteran player to do that, I thought that was Bush League. I thought that was stupid. That was over emotional. That was just not being a professional at all. Is it a mistake? Yes. Is it at the end of the world? No, it's not the end of the world. He shouldn't be painted as some kind of villain because that's what he did. I'm sure Andy Reid would vouch for him and say, hey, it was just a little mistake. It wasn't a big deal, whatever. So, but I would expect some rookie to do that, but not Travis Kelce. But again, not the end of the world. It's okay. I know nothing about Travis Kelce. I've barely heard the man ever speak. I just don't have a stomach for listening to NFL players speak at this age of my life, at this stage of my life. So I don't know what he's all about. I know he does a podcast with his brother. It's wildly successful. And of course, it's become wildly successful by 10 times once he started dating Taylor Swift, which I don't know what that has to do with his podcast. But I get sick of seeing Taylor Swift in the press box. That's not her fault. At some point, I stated that on Twitter. I said, people get sick of this, but it's not her fault. But That comes with the territory. And if they're going to show any woman that's connected with the Kansas City Chiefs, I think a lot of people would rather see Lamar Hunt's granddaughter. But anyway, that's beside the point.
I think people would take Mama Kelce as well. Like, like anybody. I mean, it's the thing is that it's just like you mentioned it, Mark, and you were in media, but she is so popular, whether you like her music or not, whether you like her or not. I mean, I don't listen to her music, but like she's popular. I mean, anybody, because I've seen some people say on Twitter, she's not that popular. I'm like, really? No, I mean, you're just saying that because you don't like. She's popular.
Yeah,
that's
she's
why
an iconic act.
The Chiefs have gone through the roof. I mean, like you said, Kelce's pocket. I mean, people knew who Kelce was. I knew who Kelce was. I've known him for years. I've been watching the NFL since I was 5, 6 years old. I know exactly who he was since he entered the league. But like, yeah, he was not this famous until now. I mean, his popularity has gone through the roof, the team, everything. So yeah, I mean, like to deny that is insane. But like you said, some people just do not like seeing it 100 times per game. I mean, it literally got to the point where every single time something happened with the Chiefs, because you tweeted earlier, you said about Swift, and I retweeted, and I'm like, they're showing Swift no matter what. Like, it could be a catch by the running back. It could be the catch by Rasheed Wright. It doesn't matter who it is. They're showing her even if it's not Kelce anymore. It was hilarious. I'm like, no. I mean, I thought this was just a Kelce thing.
Well, it was, and I don't think that he had a catch, and it was close to halftime, and it was like, well, he doesn't have a catch. We got to start showing her anyway.
Yeah, and then they started doing it even on, like, the defense got to stop, and they showed her. Like, it's not even related here, but it's because it's the Chiefs. It was just funny to me. And, I mean, just people raging on Twitter. Like, I haven't been on Twitter for too long. Like, it's been, like, probably a year. But just, like, reading Twitter, people lose their minds. Like, it's insane what people write on there. It's like, oh, my gosh, I want this person. I'm like, you're being brutal. These are human beings here. Whether you like them or not, calm down. Twitter's just unbelievable. I mean, it is unbelievable.
It is.
I just have to sometimes just take a step back and realize these people, they would not say that if they were in front of these people. It's keyboard warriors. But that some of the stuff that was said was crazy. I will say, because I'm sure you got tons of callers before I get out. But what did you think about, like, did you pay attention to, like, the ads or anything, or, like, the halftime show, any of that stuff?
I did not. I've got nothing to say about that. You certainly can say something. When it hits commercials, I'm, like, off doing something. I'm flipping around. I don't care about Super Bowl commercials. I don't care about the halftime show. I saw none of it.
I will say, though, like, I usually don't watch commercials either, because when there's, like, tons of football games on, or there's, like, tons of basketball games on in college football, college basketball, what I do is I just flip it to another game during the commercial. So I never see them. But since this is the only thing on, I'm watching it. But, like, there was one year where every commercial had, like, a robot in it, and it was just insane. Like, they were, like, pushing the futurism or whatever. It was, like, 4 years ago. And that was just – it got old quick. This year, I mean, the commercials were varied, but there was a couple of really bad ones. But I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to irritate anybody by saying why, so I'll just leave it at that. But there was a few bad ones. I will say, though, at least during the halftime report, they did SpongeBob justice. They finally played Sweet Victory during halftime. For everybody that watched SpongeBob, you know what I'm talking about. That was great. But other than that, like, I don't usually watch the halftime shows either. Just saw the SpongeBob part, but
yeah, I watched a lot of SpongeBob in my day, not because I wanted to, but because I had 2 little kids and they loved it. So I'd sit there and watch it with them. So I've seen a lot of SpongeBob in my day, but I don't know what you're talking about with that song. Is that like his theme song or something?
It was in the episode Band Geek season 2, where they have it like Squidward has a band, and then they go up to the surface and they're playing in front of the fans. It's so great. It's like it's SpongeBob singing with a completely different voice. It's not Tom Kenny, the voice actor for SpongeBob. It's the original person that's saying. It's just great. And Squidward's arch nemesis, Squilliam's losing his mind because he's more talented than Squidward. It's just a great episode. It's one of the best episodes in the whole show. But people have been clamoring for that for 10 years, especially after Steven Hillenburg's passing, the creator of SpongeBob. They just wanted that during the halftime show because it just fits so perfectly, and they would never do the whole thing, but they finally did it this year, so that was pretty cool.
All right, Jeffrey, thanks for filling me in on that one because I would have never come up with that one.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
good, Mark. I mean, I had to throw that in there a little bit. You know, the game was great, but so was that as well. But appreciate you having me on, Mark. Fantastic game. Happy for Chiefs fans. I'm not upset that your team won. I know that some of you probably think I am, but I'm not happy that they won. And hope you have a great rest of the show, Mark. Like and subscribe to the Voice of College Football, and have a great night, Mark.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate it.
You too.
I did spend part of my time, folks, during the commercials adding up starting quarterbacks and what conference they played in. And I tweeted that out at some point. So my wheels were spinning for about 5 or 6 straight commercial breaks at one point, counting up, okay, Super Bowl one, Bart Starr, Alabama, and Len Dawson, Purdue. Okay, one for the Big Ten, one for the SEC. And I went through the entire and I went through the 20. This is the state we live in college football, of course. You don't know which team to attach to which conference. So I went 2024. So that was not kind necessarily to the Pac-12 because there's now 0 quarterbacks attached to the Pac-12. If you play by those rules, not discounting Pac-12 history in any such way, I would be the last person to discount history. So the Pac-12 has a long, long history with sending Super Bowl quarterbacks to the post there with Troy Aikman, Jim Plunkett, John Elway, and others, Chris Chandler, and others, Drew Bledsoe, and others. But yes, I added that up. Also, on a more serious note, before we take our next call, there's really no good time to do this. We certainly want to send out our thoughts and, more importantly, our prayers, which I already have done and will do so more, for the victims of the church shooting in Houston. So we know that this was just minutes prior to the Super Bowl that I found out about it. I don't know exactly when it happened, sometime, of course, during the afternoon in Houston. And there's a 5-year-old who's in critical condition. There's a 57-year-old who is also in the hospital. And I don't want to get this wrong because somebody may have passed away due to that incident, but I'm not sure. Again, I found that before the Super Bowl, and the only reason I did is because I don't like to watch Super Bowl pregame. So I was away from the TV all day, and then I flipped it on. It was like 5:40, and I flipped on the TV and thought, I checked in with the Super Bowl, and I was hearing the same just garbage, just not garbage, like there was anything wrong with it, just the same montages and dribble that really makes people's minds go to mush. So I thought, I'd like to see what else is going on for the next 25 or 30. I kept checking in to get to kickoff, thinking, is the kickoff coming? Is the kickoff coming? Because I just have no tolerance anymore. For about the last 20 years, it's probably been the last time I watched pregame. I did a couple of years ago. I took in a little pregame just to see what's this pregame like now that lasts for 7 hours before the Super Bowl. But anyway, came across the news in Houston, and then that had me mesmerized and saddened for, still right now, saddened. And I was thinking, shoot, we're playing football, and these guys are going to be running into each other. And, this could be stated at any time. Of course, when there's a publicized tragedy, that's one thing that awakens many of us to real meaningful portions of life versus there are those things going on all the time. Every second, there are people in tragic, horrible situations and perishing every minute across the globe. So always understand that while we're watching these silly football games that really mean nothing when it comes down to it. This is good advertising for the channel, of course, to tell all of you that these football games are meaningless, but they are. All right, let's get to our next caller, who I believe is going to be rather happy. DeReal, are you there?
Hey, Mark, you got any intro for me or just want me to go right into it?
I said you were going to be rather happy.
Oh, I am, Mark. I'm Ham. I've just got a few questions out there. I know most predicted a 38-14 Super Bowl for San Francisco. How'd that work out tonight? How'd that work out tonight? John D'Adamo, you had Dan Marino as a better quarterback all-time entering this game than Patrick Mahomes.
Who?
Is he still a better all-time quarterback?
Who?
Dan Marino.
Who said that?
John D'Adamo.
Well, it's a team game. Let's understand that. That doesn't mean that
Yeah,
Dan Marino can't be a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes. He didn't play with as good a team.
Listen. If we want, there's a accomplishment aspect to who's the GOAT, and there's a pure skill aspect of who's the GOAT. I understand
and
that.
There's something in between that. So yes, there's an accomplishment. Yogi Berra won more World Series than anybody. He's not anywhere close to the greatest baseball player of all time. And then there's a skills level where you're Pat Mahomes, you're Aaron Rodgers, you're somebody that just, even if you won nothing, Jeff George had amazing arm talent. But then there's somewhere in between where you actually did take your skill and your, let's call it more natural talent, and you turned it into an amazing skill, but you still did not play and were not surrounded by the right players to get you where you needed to go.
I understand that, Mark, but at a certain point, we have to understand the accomplishments on the field. We have to understand that Patrick Mahomes, just from a pure eye test standpoint, is just a listen. Dan Marino is a great quarterback. Roger Staubach is an elite quarterback. These aren't like scrubs. I'm not saying they're scrubs. All I'm saying is Patrick Mahomes II is one of the two best quarterbacks of all time. Full stop.
Whoa.
No. It's not even really arguable.
You
at
come
this
to the
point.
right place, because I will put some things into context here. Not saying that you're wrong, but do you realize that Roger Staubach, because he had more important things going on in his life, like serving the Naval Academy, hadn't even stepped on a football field, an NFL field, at this stage of Patrick Mahomes' career? He still hadn't even played one down in the NFL. He still forged the career that he did, starting at the age of 29 as a rookie.
I understand that, Mark, but I can't go back and play the what if game because I don't know how his career would have turned out.
Of course, we got to play the what if game. That's what we got to do.
Right, but what do you want to do? Assign him a Super Bowl or a championship? Do you want to sign him a few hundred, like 15,000 yards? I can't do that. What if Michael Jordan didn't quit basketball during those 2 seasons to play baseball? Do we assign him 2 more NBA championships? I don't do that game. I just go with what they've done on the field.
And I understand your point. You're just going bottom line results. But at the same time, there is something to putting things into context.
Yeah, there is. There is some things in context. If you want to say, well, Rod.
So for example, before you go on to your next point, let's say we said nothing. If I stated nothing of what I just stated, and there's somebody in the chat that was saying, yeah, this Roger Staubach guy, I thought he was great, and I've heard that he's great, and all of that. And let's say all I said was, at this stage of his career, Patrick Mahomes has all these accomplishments, all these passer rating records, all the yardage, all the TDs, all this, all the championships, 3 Super Bowl wins, a Super Bowl. He's been to 4, and Roger Staubach did nothing at this stage of his career. Well, would that be accurate? Would that be, well, of course, yes, factually, that would be accurate. But I'm providing context that he didn't even play it down yet. He hadn't even thrown a pass yet. That would be different than he had played 7 years and did nothing.
Okay, let's take Roger Staubach's full career, Mark. Okay, full career.
Yeah.
He has 2 Super Bowls right now. Patrick Mahomes has more.
Played in 4.
Yeah.
He played in better, certainly played against better defenses. He played possibly the greatest defense in history in 2 of those Super Bowls.
Okay, he has 1 Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes has probably 3. I don't know who they gave it to, but I would assume 3. Yeah. He was only a 6-time Pro Bowler. Patrick Mahomes is very close in that category, if not already timed up. He was only All-Pro once in his entire career. Patrick Mahomes hasn't been in that category. And he was NFL passing leader 4 times. I mean, he's a great quarterback. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Is he Patrick Mahomes II? No, he's not. Patrick Mahomes, at worst, I mean, absolute worst, is the 3rd best quarterback of all time right now. The only people that are arguable is Tom Brady and Joe Montana. Everyone else right now is worse than Patrick Mahomes from an accomplishment standpoint. And I know that's crazy, but that's how new Patrick Mahomes is in the NFL, how recent he was drafted. But how many quarterbacks have been been to the AFC Championship game this many times? How many of them have won this many division titles? How many of them have been to the Super Bowl? How many of them have won the Super Bowl this many times? That list shrinks so quick, Mark, that what Patrick Mahomes is doing is historic, and he's on GOAT trajectory right now.
Yes, based on accomplishments for sure. Now, based on everything else included, that's an argument. That's one of the reasons why I've said many times there is no question that Tom Brady is the greatest of all time based on accomplishments. He is the most accomplished NFL quarterback in history. Do I consider him the GOAT? I think it's debatable. I tend to think that he is the GOAT, that he's the greatest of all time. But to me, there's a difference between accomplishments and your ability, because it's a team game. We're not talking about, so for the heavyweight boxing champion, the greatest or the top 10 list of all time, well, that's the same exact list. Your accomplishments and how great you were, it's pretty much the same list. You're out there by yourself. That's who you are. Tennis players, golfers, they've, we can throw all sorts of luck and circumstances into it and discuss injuries and things that happen to various tennis players, golfers, and boxers. But basically, the GOAT list is the same as the accomplishment list.
I understand that it's harder to do this in a team sport, but at a certain point, if you just keep winning over and over and over and over again, and it's clear just from an eye perspective test that you're the main reason that you keep winning, eventually that has to be factored into the equation. Because I remember when Tom Brady had 4, there was a defensive player that had 5 Super Bowl rings.
Yes.
And he wasn't the greatest of all time because he clearly didn't have this level of impact as Tom Brady. Yeah. And I see Only Talk Sports saying there's a, quote, long way to go before he enters the GOAT conversation. I'm sorry, but if Patrick Mahomes wins the championship next year, there's going to be people, legit people, who argue he's already the GOAT with 4 Super Bowl wins. Now, you may not like that, but that argument is going to take place because Patrick Mahomes would be the first ever quarterback to have a 3-peat.
Really?
And he would have been to 7 straight AFC championship games. 7 straight AFC championship games.
Okay, so DeReal, nothing you've said I find offensive or ridiculous in any such way. Yes, Patrick Mahomes, in my estimation, could be argued as the greatest of all time today. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just pushing back, as I am apt to do, just to challenge you, number one. Number two, when you bring Roger Staubach in, again, he was a 29-year-old rookie. So yes, different circumstances involving his career. He only played 11 years. He was the passing champion and just had played in 2 Super Bowls and had to retire at 36 years old and he was at the top of his game because of concussion issues. So you can't do anything about that. And to your point, you can't say, well, he would have done X, Y, and Z. But to me, it is a consideration. It's worth noting that, the guy just played in 2 Super Bowls, had just been the passer rating leader for 2 straight years, but he had retired right after that due to concussion issues at the age of 36. He didn't start playing until he was 29 years old, or 38 and 29, I think, are the 2 years. Now, where was I going to go with this? I'm going to bring up a hypothetical that is at the end of the spectrum, albeit, but I'm still making a point here. Let's say Patrick Mahomes was exactly the same quarterback. From the time he left Texas Tech, he went somewhere else and played in the NFL and developed into the same exact quarterback. But he was drafted by Jacksonville, the New York Giants, fill in the blank. The worst franchise in the league. But he himself had developed the same skill set, the same understanding of the game, all of that. But he was only able to elevate his teams to 9 and 10 win seasons and playoff losses. Let's say he's the same quarterback.
He wouldn't be the GOAT. He wouldn't even be in the conversation.
Well, he'd be the same quarterback.
I understand that, but that's just not the way it works, Mark. Sorry. And to give a little bit counter to what you said,
I'm making the commonsensical evaluation. Now, he wouldn't have the postseason performances because he wouldn't have the opportunity.
Well, in the beginning of this,
that's my point.
In the beginning of this conversation, I said it's a combination of both skill and achievement. If your definition for who the GOAT is just the best player in the world, then I think the argument Patrick Mahomes the GOAT could occur today. I think it could have occurred last year, to be honest with you. But I don't think the NFL, your example, is applicable because I think C.J. Stroud went to the worst franchise, considered the worst franchise on the Houston Texans. They had basically nobody there, and they went to the playoffs and won a playoff game this year. And I don't think C.J. Stroud is better than Patrick Mahomes II. So I think if Patrick Mahomes even went to the worst franchise in the NFL, put him on the Jets, put him on the Browns, I still think he's on a similar trajectory. Now, do I think he's got 3 Super Bowls already? No, but I think he would have won at least 1 at this point. Now, I have no way to prove that, but this isn't like college where there's a cataclysmic gap between first and 133. 1 in 32 is so close that if you have a transcendent player of Patrick Mahomes' level, any team he goes on should instantly be Super Bowl contender.
So another point in this is the position point that I'll make. If we're talking about greatest offensive lineman, greatest running back, greatest wide receiver, greatest whatever position you want to say, I never hear anything brought up about, well, he went to the playoffs this many times, he won this many conference championships, went to this many Super Bowls, won this many Super Bowls. Don't hear it. I understand the game of football. I understand the responsibility of the quarterback. But I don't think that there should be just a complete disconnect of we give quarterbacks championship trophies or we don't give them championship trophies, and coaches, just like they're coaches versus everybody else on the roster. You just basically get evaluated for how good you are against your contemporaries statistically and otherwise. But in terms of the winning portion of that being given to Barry Sanders versus Tony Dorsett versus O.J. Simpson versus Jim Brown versus Derrick Henry versus on and on and on, LaDainian Tomlinson, that's totally out the window. You know, nobody's going to say, if you say LaDainian Tomlinson is the greatest running back I've ever seen, nobody's going to say, well, he didn't win a Super Bowl. He didn't go to a Super Bowl.
Right. And I understand your point where it's the quarterback gets most of the reward. I think it's just because they have the ball every single play. That's kind of why it's like that. I mean, for tight end, I know there's argument that Travis Kelce is the greatest receiver, playoff receiver of all time, surpassing the great Jerry Rice. And when they do that, those comparisons just about catches and yards and stuff like that. It doesn't bring in Super Bowl rings. Similar to coaching. I mean, what is coaches evaluated with is your Super Bowls, how many Super Bowls you have, how many appearances you have. So I understand it's not fair. It's different metrics for different people, but that's just the standard we're operating under, Mark.
Yeah, but again, see, you are operating by the parameters that are placed out there. I tend to conduct myself in a way that if I don't agree with the parameters, and in this case, it's not that I completely disagree with them, but I have questions about them, I want to push back, I'm not going to just accept the parameter. You know, somebody commented to one of our videos or live streams the other day about, well, you try to rewrite history and you can't do that because they went into some ridiculous rant about capable individuals made those decisions, so it is the way it is. Well, I'm not looking to rewrite history, but if a bunch of clowns said that BYU is the best football team in 1984, why do I need to accept that if I think it's worth debate and analysis?
I understand that, but for me, Mark, I just don't question the criteria that much. Maybe it's because it benefits me, okay? Maybe it's because I think Patrick Mahomes is going to win 7 Super Bowls. So
good for you. You at least state it. You at least state that. And that's a breath of fresh air. And it's not like you have to like come up with some kind of ridiculous argument here. Patrick Mahomes is building a case, and to your point, and I'm not arguing it, a top 3 position right now, all time, and the trajectory is way beyond that.
Right. And I see John D'Animo says Kelsey's the best tight end since Gronk. No, John D'Animo, Kelce is the best tight end, period. Okay? Not since Gronk, it's period. End of sentence. Kelce is the best tight end. He's catching Jerry Rice now to be the best receiver, period. And for people who thinks that's crazy, look at the catching stats between Rice and Kelce in the playoffs. They're pretty close. I mean, if Kelce comes back next year, he could easily catch Jerry Rice. I know that sounds crazy, but he's already got him in receiving touchdowns. He only needs like 300 or 400 yards to catch him in receiving yards. So he can easily do it.
What was Kelce's rookie year?
I don't remember. He's 34 right now, so
he's been playing about 12 years.
Something along. I would have 2013.
And so he just completed his 11th season, and Gronk played 9 is my guess, I think.
I'm trying to find that information for you.
So the way it looks right now, Travis Kelce is going to have a much lengthier career. Now, when careers end in the NFL, they seem to fall off a cliff. Like a guy could be one of the best in the league one year, and a year and a half later, he's just too banged up and boom, calls it quits. So it ends rather abruptly, typically in the NFL. But I think Gronk only played 9 years off the top of my head.
I think something like that seems right. But, I mean, you got to take injuries into consideration when you determine who the GOAT is. I mean, the best ability is availability. Yes. And if you can't be out there on the football field, I mean, that's going to impact your team, Mark.
Well, again, I think it's worth a discussion, meaning that if you say, let's say Caleb Williams enters the NFL and plays the most ridiculous 5 seasons we've ever seen in the history of the NFL, and then he gets hurt and he never plays again. Well, there's an argument to say he did this. It's the Sandy Koufax argument from a long, long time ago that most people probably can't relate to, who just had unbelievable pitching stats for a short period of time. Then he got hurt. That you can make the argument, wow, he was the best for a concentrated period of time. But you can also make the argument, well, that's part of the deal. Don't you want your quarterback to be out there for 12 to 15 years? Yes, you do. And to be continuing, even if he has a decline, if it's a slight decline and he's still one of the best in the game, you want that quarterback 12 or 13 years later and not for 5 years. That can be argued on both points, but I tend to side with your end of the argument because, yes, was Tom Brady at his very peak for 20 years? Of course not. Nobody is, but Tom Brady, as one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL, or not at his absolute peak, is still better than having him only for 10 years at his absolute peak.
Right. That's the way I view it as well. I mean, just the hate. And I'm calling it hate because everything to me is hate in this state, Mark. Hummus Hero saying Kelce isn't even the best tight end in Chiefs history. My goodness. I know Tony Gonzalez was a fantastic tight end, but come on. Travis Kelce's a better tight end than Tony Gonzalez.
Okay.
I mean, come on.
Tony Gonzalez, I would say at the end of his career was considered like a top 10 tight end in history. Now, he certainly doesn't have the playoff credentials by any stretch. Tony Gonzalez barely made it to the playoffs. He finally got to, they played the Colts one year in the playoffs. And then I think near the end of his career, he finally got there as well. But again, that's not his fault. He was a great tight end and arguably the best in the game. But let's see. Tony Gonzalez played for Played 270 games. He played a long, long time. 97 through 13. Good Lord, that's 17 seasons. 17 seasons. He caught 111 touchdown passes. He had over 15,000 yards, and he caught 1,325 passes. So keep that in mind. 1,325, 15,000, and 111 versus Kelce's.
He's at 11, 3, 28, 74, and what was?
No. So here we go. Gonzalez, 1,325 in receptions. Kelce, 907. Yards, Gonzalez, 15,000 and change. Kelce, 11,000 and change. TDs, Gonzalez, 111. Kelce, 74. But 17 years versus, you might as well say, 10 seasons. Yes. So you're working on 17 seasons versus 10. So Kelce has better production per season. And again, the postseason accomplishments are, they're not debatable. It's not even close.
100%, Mark. 100%.
Yeah.
I mean,
Gonzalez has the stats argument. So if
For
Kelce he decided to hang it up tomorrow, there is an argument that he's the greatest tight end of all time, but it's certainly a wide open argument.
Right. I think Kelce is going to play next season. And I think the beautiful part about winning this Super Bowl, Mark, is we get to do this all next year. Because Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, they all want the three-peat. They all want to do something no team in NFL history has done, and that's go back to back. So everybody gets a whole new year of this. I mean, isn't going to be great, Mark? I kind of wish they awarded the Super Bowl MVP to Taylor Swift. I felt in that fourth quarter, I was thinking, man, Travis Kelce's going off because Taylor Swift's in the building. Didn't you feel that same energy?
I got to say, I was not feeling much energy. No, I don't feel the same energy as you do. Taylor Swift just doesn't do it for me in any way, shape, or form. Although I did determine the other day that I do know 12 Taylor Swift songs. So my daughter loves Taylor Swift. She's not like crazy.
Does she watch the podcast?
Maniacal, like she was like this with Justin Bieber when she was growing up, when she was 10, 12 years old. But she was never crazy, like posters in the room and that kind of thing. Just loves the music and all of that and likes to keep up with them. So now she's a Swiftie, and she's seen her twice for sure, maybe 3 times. And she'll send me these videos from the concert. She's gone to see her in Boston twice at the Patriots Stadium. And she'll send me, it's funny because she sends me videos when they're some of Taylor Swift's older songs that she knows that I'll know, because as you can imagine, as a dad, I've got my 2 kids in the car. And when I had my little daughter in the car, I'd let her listen to whatever she wants. So from about probably 2005 up until just a few years ago, I was pretty up on the top 40 scene because I'd let my kids listen to what they wanted to. And my daughter liked top 40 music like most little teeny bops do. And, but she'll send me the Taylor Swift songs. And so I was curious the other day. I thought, I was talking to a friend of mine and who was kind of like, this Taylor Swift stuff is out of control. And I said, yeah, she's got 280 million Instagram followers. I saw that somewhere and I looked it up. I'm like, good Lord. And then I looked up some of her more popular videos on YouTube, and they've got like 3 billion views. And he's like, yeah, this is insane. And I said, I kind of like her music. It's kind of catchy. I don't care if I would never hear it the rest of my life. But then I thought, wonder how many songs I know of Taylor Swift. And I went through her little catalog, and at least a dozen. So that's quite a few for me.
I'm proud of you, Mark. I'm proud of you for knowing that many Taylor Swift songs. I'm sure your daughter's proud of you as well.
I texted that to her today. I said, I tested myself and I know 12 Taylor Swift songs.
And out of pure curiosity, did she say anything back in kindness, or was she so like, good Lord?
I'm sorry, I'd have to grab my phone to see what she sent back. Oh, she was kind to me. No, she's kind to her dear old dad.
That's nice. That's nice. I know there's a segment of hardcore Swifties that once the rumors were starting out, they watched the New Heights, which is the Kelce's podcast. Was she one of them in the comments section learning the game of football with all the other Swifties? I mean, it's an interesting experience, Mark. Having people watch football podcasts that don't know literally nothing about football, it's very interesting.
Well, I would hope my daughter, being my daughter, has learned some about football from me. She did win 2 like recreational intramural flag football championships based on part of the knowledge that that she took from me.
Okay. But I mean, I would have, going back to my original point, I would have gave Taylor Swift the Super Bowl MVP or maybe an honorary trophy. Be like Super Bowl MVP fan or something like that. Just to, because for the female demographic audience, for them to tune in next year.
You know what should have been done? This would have been so hilarious. They should have put in some kind of conspiracy and just to blow up the internet, just to blow people's minds, just announced that Taylor Swift was named the Super Bowl MVP and do it on CBS. Of course, they're not going to do this because that completely ruins their credibility, but it would just been hilarious just to let it sit out there for about a half hour to see how many people would have been jumping off bridges and, blowing their brains out and going crazy and going nuts over that.
Oh, that would have been hilarious, Mark. I find this whole thing rather comedical. This whole Taylor Swift thing, because listen, am I the biggest Taylor Swift fan in the world? No. She's got good music. She's fine. Yeah. She's not horrible. She's not like music today. Her music's at least listenable to. But you have people that act like, oh my gosh, they showed Taylor Swift for 14 seconds. Therefore, the entire game has been overshadowed because of her presence. I mean, they showed Jay-Z today, Beyonce, Lady Gaga. Nobody mentioned any of them. It's only when Taylor Swift show they mentioned them.
Yeah, well, I tweeted out a few days ago because I was just curious, something about does the sight of Taylor Swift during NFL games ruin your football watching experience? And I'd say like 40% of people said that at least follow me, said that it did. It doesn't bother me. I don't care. I find it kind of comical myself. And I kind of more embraced it during the Super Bowl here. The more I just thought, yeah, this is just silliness.
Right. And now you have people like Jeffrey, because have you seen the experiment where they show like an image for a frame and that's all people remember because it's out of the ordinary? I mean, Jeffrey's claiming they showed her for at least 5 minutes. I guarantee you, if you put a stopwatch and timed every single time Taylor Swift was shown on the TV, it couldn't have been more than a minute. But because it's like, oh, there she is for 2 seconds, your brain processes it longer because it's unexpected.
Yes. I don't know if this particular news network was accurate, but they were talking about the whole Taylor Swift. I think they were actually relating it to the election, which that's a whole other topic. But they stated some statistics about how much she is actually being shown on these NFL games. And I got to say, if their statistics were accurate, I was very surprised at how little it was.
Yeah, what was it? Was it like, I think it was under like 30 seconds, right?
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah, 25 seconds a game or something like that. And I was surprised by that.
And to me, that's more than reasonable, honestly. I mean, that's for the amount of percentage. I'm not sure if you've seen like female demographic. I heard it's up like 9% this year over year for football. I figured they would milk that concept for more time because only 25 seconds to teach Taylor Swift in a game that's 3.5 hours. If I was just a fan of that one person and didn't care about football at all, I wouldn't watch it. But I guess I'm not a hardcore Swiftie like some of these people are out here.
Yeah, that kind of phenomenon surprises me and just fascinates me, that it's not like it's 1975. And so your favorite pop artist goes to a bunch of NFL games and they show them and you're like, well, except for, going to see their latest film, if they are in the film industry, or getting their latest album that comes out every 2 or 3 years, what is your access to even the most popular artists of all time pre-internet? versus you can go on the internet and see anything you want of Taylor Swift. So I don't understand I'm going to sit through a 3.5-hour football game and see Taylor Swift for 28 seconds.
Right. I don't agree with that either, Mark. I just don't understand it. Let me put it that way. But Mark, I'm not sure if you saw it. I'm going to wrap this final thing up with Jim Harbaugh, just, to go back to my roots. So I'm not sure if you saw Jim Harbaugh when giving up his opening day press conference for him being introduced to the Chargers. He already gave Kansas City bulletin board material for next year, saying he was going to win multiple championships, Mark. What does Jim Harbaugh think he is? He's planning on winning multiple championships in the same division as a current dynasty with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, with one of the greatest head coaches of all time. It seems like doubt, Mark. I mean, that just seems like doubt to me. And I guess we got to prove them wrong, and we got to go 20-0, and we got to win the Super Bowl again. And we'll be back here next year.
Well, on one hand, I give him credit for saying whatever's on his mind, whatever he wants to say. And if he wants to go out there and throw stuff out there, he didn't do that at Michigan. He never said we're going to beat Ohio State. He never said we're going to win championships. He always said, his famous quote was after he got his brains beat in 5 or 6 years in a row was, we're either going to do it or we're going to die trying. Was about as good as he could do. So for him to be that brash and that bold, hey, that's fine. I really don't understand it. I would rather just be confident in your delivery. I would be, certainly if I'm in his place or anyone's place at that level, I would be confident. I wouldn't bow to anyone, but at the same time, I'm not talking about winning multiple championships until I win one championship. Win the first one.
Right. And Ralph Wolf asked, what should he say? Jim Harbaugh should say, I'm just happy I'm getting this job. I love the Chargers. They got a great quarterback. We got a foundation to build because, Mark, I'm not sure if you realize this. They won one more game than the New England Patriots, who the New England Patriots were horrendous this year. I mean, they were just terrible. And the Chargers won one more game than them, despite having all this quote-unquote talent they had. They lost to the Chiefs' second-string unit, basically, in the final regular season game. So he should just be worried about building a team that can go 9-8, 8-9.
Well, you know as well as I do, things change quickly in the NFL.
Yeah, I understand that, Mark, but you hopefully you understand when the Patriots were on their run, the Jets, Bills, and Dolphins had no water to breathe. And that's what the Denver Broncos, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Los Angeles Chargers are going through right now. They're going to have no room to have any life for the next 15 to 20 years, unfortunately, because they've got one of the 2 or 3 greatest players of all time in their division.
Absolutely. Well, DeReal, congratulations on the Super Bowl championship.
Yeah, no problem, Mark. The only final thing I'll say is who's got it better than us?
There it is. Let's get to some super chats before we take the next call. I appreciate these folks. We got Matt here saying, what do you like, college or pro overtime rule? Well, of course, the professional overtime rule, at least in the playoffs, as I understand. So we know when it all came down that at one point it was just whoever scored first was the end of the game. And that lasted up until that first playoff was the Tim Tebow game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that was like 2010, right? 2010 or 12. I'm losing track of what year that was. Anyway, it was Tebow winning the playoff game because he threw a touchdown pass because they had changed the rule. No, I think they changed the rules right after that, correct? Or maybe that was the first playoff game under the new rules. Anyway, it went from sudden death, whoever scores, however they score, game's over, to if you kick a field goal, you just take the lead and the other team gets the ball. And of course, the Patriots won a Super Bowl that way because they got the football and they marched down the field and scored a game-winning touchdown. I would have loved to have seen Matt Ryan get the ball in his hands to try to win the game. That has to be the most frustrating thing I could think of. And I know that I I got to say that Aaron Rodgers has probably lost more meaningful games that way than anyone. He lost a game to the Arizona Cardinals that way in a wild card game. He lost the NFC Championship game. Well, that was a different no, he did lose the NFC Championship game. Well, because one of his teammates couldn't catch the football on a bounding onside kick to secure the win, and then he didn't get the ball. Russell Wilson did. He throws a game-winning touchdown pass, and there were a couple other instances I won't go into. So they changed it at some point, and my apologies here because I followed the NFL like practically no one for years and years and years and years, but I just tune it on Sunday afternoon and don't really pay that much attention to it. So I haven't really followed the game for the last 5 or 6 years, I would say. So at some point they changed the rule to both teams are going to possess the ball unless there's a defensive touchdown, because you basically have, in fact, allowed them to possess the ball, plus you scored, so the game's over. And that was stated by the official starting. The NFL rules are so much better than the college rules. The college rules are just an obliteration of the sport. It's like putting a runner on second base in a baseball or softball game and saying, well, we have to give the offense an advantage because we just want to get this thing over with. Well, that's not how you play competitive sports, to say we want to figure out the best way to get this over with as quickly as possible. No, that ruins the integrity of the sport. Where did that runner come from at second base? What did they just appeared on second base? No. So putting the football at the 25-yard line for these offenses, basically, if you've got so you have given way too much responsibility and way too much value to field goal kicking, number one, because basically you have given any team that is capable of kicking a field goal, that has a good field goal kicker, you've made it automatic that they're going to score unless you can take the football away from them. And you give a team that has a bad field goal kicker, well, they're sitting at the 25. If they don't move the ball, they got to kick it from 42. And bad field goal kicking teams in college football, that is a difficult kick. So you're putting way too much on special teams. And this whole idea of the 25-yard line business, and it's just all these crazy rules that they've tweaked through the years. And now after a couple overtimes, then you got to go for 2, and then they put the ball at the 2-yard line, and you're just running a series of 2-point plays. Well, that's not football. That's situational football. So I don't like it, but I understand it. You can't keep these players on the field forever. We're getting far, far away from this, but they are still, quote, amateurs. And so they shouldn't be under the same guides as professionals. And shoot, man, after discussing this with a friend today, again, the whole pay for play, NIL, all of that business, man, I got to dive deep into that, because there is so much that needs to be said about all of that and how it could possibly, I'm not going to say that I've got the cure-all for all of it by any stretch. Do I have all the answers? But I certainly have a lot of ideas and suggestions that could make things better, because we are headed toward a bad place. All right. Thank you so much for that super chat. And then we got T Hawkeye. Tell the real MVP the Big Ten is better than the SEC. So am I supposed to tell him that? Because that would not be my conviction to tell him that. So I guess I'm just supposed to relay the message for you that you're saying that the Big Ten is better than the SEC. Well, the Big Ten currently is not better than the SEC, but it may be this next season. That very well could be the case. But the current Big Ten is not better. The Big Ten that was playing in 2023 was not better than the SEC. But it could be in 2024. T Hawkeye. Marino was a better passer. Yeah, he could put more velocity on a football. Absolutely. Beyond that, I don't know. Boy, Mahomes can run around and throw it from different angles all over the place. But we are all entitled to our opinions. Jackson, what's going on tonight?
Oh, it's going pretty good, Mark. I've got a feeling if T Hawkeye is on the Ocho tomorrow, and if Darrell's on the Ocho tomorrow, that could be hilarious, and it could get pretty ugly real quick. Big Ten SEC debate. Oh man. But that's what the off season's all about. Oh man. But I will say though, I can't help but feel like this was another missed opportunity for Kyle Shanahan because he's now 0-3 in Super Bowls. You know, that first Super Bowl, everybody knows about that 28-3 blown lead. Then there's Super Bowl 54. Now it's his second Super Bowl loss as a head coach. And I can't help but feel like the 49ers are now just they're just that team that falls short in Super Bowl. But what do you think, Mark?
Well, I would say that other than not being aware of what his career plans are, he's a strong, healthy young man that he may have a lot of other opportunities. We've certainly seen, look at Andy Reid. Andy Reid, as of 5 years ago, was in his late 50s and had been coaching in the NFL since the late 1990s and had no Super Bowl wins. But he was able to take care of that. So I don't disagree with you, but I don't agree with you because we've seen examples of both. We've been seeing guys like Tom Osborne who weren't able to knock down the door and had that excruciating loss in the Orange Bowl, and he gets 20 years into his tenure, 21 years into his tenure with Nebraska, and then boom, he's winning 3 out of 4 national championships, where it just seemed like for a period of time, and you know the history, but I certainly lived it, watching him just get clubbed over the head by Nebraska or by Florida State and Miami in Orange Bowls, and thinking, man, this Nebraska team, they're not even close. They're losing 23-3 and 22-0 in Orange Bowl games. And he figured it out. But you're right. There have been many cases. Dan Marino, great case right there. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, reaches the Super Bowl in his second season. He played 17 years. Now, what was the talk after Dan Marino lost to the 49ers? It was, well, he'll be back, he'll be back, he'll be back a bunch of other times, and he'll have all sorts of opportunities. Didn't turn out that way.
Yeah, it's a shame they never got a Super Bowl, but it's always one of those mysteries to wonder, what if Dan Marino got a Super Bowl? That would have been cool. That would have been extremely cool. But as with the Chiefs, they are the new dynasty now. I saw something on Twitter tonight where somebody was saying, oh, the Patriots dynasty is gone after 2019, where it's, I think it was like a GIF or a meme where they were saying, it's more like under new management. And we see right now, Chiefs are running the show until proven otherwise.
Yeah, they are. The average NFL fan that follows it, and again, I still enjoy it. I still have the games on and all of that, but I don't follow the rosters and the personnel like I did at one point. But from my understanding, the Baltimore Ravens were generally considered the best team in the NFL. And if not, it was between San Francisco and Baltimore, and Kansas City took care of them. And then they were supposed to be a little bit inferior to San Francisco. I don't know what the line was on this game.
It was 49ers minus 1.5.
Okay. So it was awfully close. But I got to think a lot of that was respect for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, that it might have been a little bit further if it weren't for the respect in their championship pedigree. So yeah, it's pretty amazing what they've been able to pull off, for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what the week 1 game's going to be. I don't know who's it going to be against right now? I mean, I know that's going to be announced on the first Thursday of May because it's been that way since 2020. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Chiefs Chargers will be the week 1 matchup.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe that could be like the new 49ers Seahawks from 2011 to 2014 with Harbaugh running the show in LA.
Yes, Sean. Dan Marino played from 1983 through 99. So that is 17 years. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. It's my recollection since they started that big Thursday night as being the opener with the Super Bowl champ playing, that they usually try to match them up against a team from the other conference and make it kind of an unusual matchup. Like they had the Chiefs and the Lions this year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
So I
they
think
did.
that's what they've generally done. I might be wrong.
Well, they got the Buccaneers and the Saints coming to their backyard for 2024. So I'm thinking maybe that could be Chiefs Buccaneers. Because, I mean, I'll be honest, I feel that the Saints just underachieved with Coach Allen as their head coach. I mean, a Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes matchup, that'll be awesome. And it's especially a nostalgic matchup for those that keep up with Big 12 football, because I mean, that was pretty fun right there. I mean, I remember watching Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes going against one another, and it was like a really high scoring game with Oklahoma, Texas Tech several years back. That was pretty big. I love seeing high scoring games, but I mean, high scoring games, low scoring games, they're all good with me. But how do you feel about that, Mark?
What, high scoring versus low scoring games?
Yeah, are you cool? Are you cool with either one, or do you prefer one or the other?
So I'm not that hung up on the score per se, but I'll tell you the kind of games that I typically enjoy. I like to see a mixture of offense and defense. I don't like to see 9-7, and I typically don't like to see, not that there haven't been some really good 45-42 games, but what happens when it's usually in that score range or higher is that it's not so much that the offenses are that good. It's just that the defenses are so bad that nobody can tackle. Everybody's blowing a coverage, and that's the product of 52-48 is that. So the games that I typically like to see are maybe mid to high 20s, low 30s, because they're usually the games, especially in the NFL, where the defenses are really good, but the quarterback play is so exceptional and the wide receiver play is so exceptional, but they have to execute tight window throws because the coverage is excellent, and you get a little bit of everything. Plus, I love to see a blocked punt. Love to see blocked kicks. I love
Same.
blocked kicks, and I like strip sacks. If you could throw a safety in there, that's good too. Like to see some different kind of plays. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, safeties are pretty cool. I mean, they're pretty cool.
Yeah, you don't get to
But
see too many safeties. I like to see a safety, and I don't like to see it where there's a holding call in the end zone. I mean, a real safety.
yeah, I will say I wish there was some more history made tonight. I mean, we've seen overtime games in the playoffs, but we've never seen a double overtime Super Bowl. Now
Yeah.
that would be awesome. I'll do even better, a triple overtime Super Bowl. I mean, people say, "Oh, there's too much football." It's like there's no such thing as too much football. I mean, I hate when people whine and cry about that 2018 LSU Texas A&M game. I mean, that was the best day of my life. I mean, I got to see the Iron Bowl for the first time in my lifetime, and then I'm coming home with my uncle, and we're trying to keep up with LSU Texas A&M. I mean, that's a day I'm never gonna forget right there. LSU Texas A&M in 7 overtimes. I mean, I want to see more 7 overtime games.
Yeah, although when they're just running these plays from the 2-yard line, I'm not so much with it. Like that, what we watched tonight to me is a bit better version of overtime.
That's why we'll come up with a petition to bring back the 1996 to 2018 overtime rules. They need to
Okay.
come back as soon as possible.
You
I
get on that
mean,
petition, Jackson.
I plan to. I'm gonna write something like that. I'm gonna figure out how to word it out, but it'll be fun. But in a little bit, I'm gonna go watch a little bit of NFL Primetime with Chris Berman. But before I go, now I know you worked at ESPN at one point in your life. You got any like Chris Berman stories?
Chris Berman stories.
Yeah.
Man, I'll have to tell some ESPN stories some night. No Chris Berman stories come to mind, although he worked in the same building as I did for a long time. Sorry to disappoint you. I can't think
Nah,
of any
that's okay.
Chris Berman stories. I don't know that I ever spoke to the man in my life.
Oh man.
But I would see him on occasion, but certainly the talent that I talked to the most, and I'm not saying like I was buddies with him or talking to him every other day or anything like that,
All right.
but because I gave tours, they had a select amount of people that were eligible to give tours because you had to be at a certain tenure, and you also had to be you didn't have to be in management, but anyway, you had to be in production operations to give tours. But anyway, so I enjoyed giving tours. Now, those tours were typically to corporate types from outside companies that would want to see things, but we would go through the radio studios and usually stop and talk to Scott Van Pelt, talk to Colin Cowherd when he was
Wow.
there. And I had, I had some good conversations with those guys. One time, there was a extra inning baseball game. I don't know if you like baseball and who out there's going to relate to this, but I sat at the Baseball Tonight desk because there was an extra inning game forever. And Carl Ravitch was sitting there, Barry Larkin, and oh shoot, former manager. Anyway, and we just started talking baseball, and I was there for probably 90 minutes talking baseball with those guys, just hearing Barry Larkin tell baseball stories. It was great, just sitting there like three of us talking ball. So that was fun. But I had a great time working at ESPN. I was there for 19 years, but I was there long enough. But it was a great place to work.
Oh man, that I love that story, man. That is awesome, man. And before I go, like tell everyone if you're looking for some last second Valentine's Day gifts, check out the latest Voice of College Football merchandise where you can go over to topqualityshirts.com/collections/Mark where you can get some of the best merchandise out there, including this top 25 that actually matters coffee mug.
Look at that, Jackson. And Jackson, remember, I'm not going to say it here, but we had an email exchange, so I'll pick that up. So just let me know. Or I think I did possibly. Yes. All right.
Well, thank you for that, man.
Thank you,
It's
Jackson.
an awesome
Jackson, you
mug.
do so much for us here. We appreciate you.
I appreciate it, man. And yeah, it's an honor being part of the Voice College Football community, Patreon community, and the YouTube membership. It's an honor being a part of it. I love it. It's where you can get some of the best, insider knowledge in all college football. So everyone tune in to patreon.com/MarkRogersTV or become a YouTube member of the Voice College Football, where you can get some of the best insider knowledge for college football. Stay tuned, everyone.
Thank you, Jackson. You have a good night.
You too. Sleep well and stay warm.
So here in about a month, we typically do it earlier in the off season. We'll do a state of the Voice of College Football. And for a lot of you, that will not be a time to tune in because we will not be talking about college football. We'll be talking about this channel, the network, everything that we do. But a lot of you enjoy that, and I appreciate that you take interest in that. But there's a reason we're going to wait a little bit later in the off season to do that. All right, we do have Dr. C on the line. Dr. C, what's going on tonight?
Hey, how's it going, Mark?
I am doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I am a Niner fan. That's my NFL team.
Oh, Well, sorry about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, they played a fantastic season. My family got together and watched every game during the season, and the team played hard, and they lost a close game, but they played well. So that's all you can ask.
So how did you become a 49ers fan?
Well, I was born in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. What is it? Born in San Francisco, then moved to Arkansas. So that's how I became a fan of Arkansas, and then I liked USC. But you know what? I always repped all California teams, whether it was Stanford, UCLA. I always wanted the Pac-12 actually. I just wanted the Pac-10, Pac-12 to do well because I know they got hated on, and I felt people didn't really understand Pac-12 football because they didn't watch it. But it was fun. But I'm looking at, funny thing you bring this up. I'm looking at the SEC to distribute $51 million per school. Why I bring that up is because the reports are that when ESPN came to make a contract with the Pac-12, the Pac-12 asked for $50 million. And that's when ESPN just cut all talks about a contract with them. If that ESPN deal went through, do we still have a Pac-12?
Oh, well, of course we do. Of course we do. But something I remind our friends over on the Florida State channel and some other ACC related channels is that while they are correct, and I've stated the same thing, it's common knowledge that the ACC brokered a horrible deal with ESPN. That's not debatable. Let's not kid ourselves in thinking, well, the ACC has this horrible contract and they're making X number of dollars less than the SEC or the Big Ten. Well, the ACC is not worth as much as the Big Ten or the SEC. So I'm just going to throw out generic numbers. Let's say the ACC, I believe that they're going to be in the $40 million range this year. They did at least create a scalable system in which they are receiving more money. So their contract is the same number for those, whatever it was, 14 years, but it does increase every year. Now, it doesn't increase at the rate to catch up with these other conferences, but it is backloaded to a certain extent. So I think it averages like $35 million a year, but they're at a point where they're distributing more than that per school. Well, just because the Big Ten, I'm just going to throw out a number. The Big Ten's, let's say it's 70 million a year, and the ACC's at 35 million a year. A lot of ACC people tend to look at that and think, well, man, these Big Ten schools are getting 70 million a year. We're getting 35 million a year. We should be getting 70 million a year. So we made this horrible deal. Well, you did make a horrible deal, but your schools aren't worth an average of 70 million a year. So it's the same thing with the Pac-12. Now, the number that you're pulling with the SEC at 51 million, I would like to dive a little bit deeper into that because I saw that same report this week and I was thinking, okay, because there's a lot to this when you start to look at these different numbers and where they're coming from and what they are attributed to, because that's like a base number. They're going to earn more money per school than that. But again, I can't speak to that right this second because I don't have this stuff in front of me. Because the gap's a lot larger than that in totality. We're seeing numbers in the 80 to 85 or 75 to $85 million range with the SEC and the Big Ten per school versus what these other conferences are getting. But absolutely, I think if the Pac-12 would have been in the 30-some million dollar range, that there would still be a Pac-12.
Yeah, apparently that's what the offer was. Apparently ESPN offered 30. I don't know how the Pac-12 thought that they were worth $50 million per team. You know, no, not a lot of people outside of the West Coast are watching Cal versus Arizona. You know, back in the day,
No.
especially yeah.
So the Big Ten contract is 7 years, 8 billion. So that's 1.1 and change billion per year. So if you divide that by 18 schools, I don't feel like doing that math. That's for sure in my head. We'll figure that out. Let's see. We got, what is that? Let's get, I don't even know if I can count that many zeros. 8,000, 80,000, 800,000, 8. That's 80. That's geez, that's 8 million. That's 800 million. Okay, there's 8 billion divided by 7. There's your 1.14 billion divided by 18 equals what I believe is 63 million. Yes, no. Okay, I must have screwed this up. It's got to be 63 million per team per year in the Big Ten. That's
And
if you
is that divided evenly?
well, no, that's a good point. You make that. So it's divided evenly among current Big Ten schools, but Oregon and Washington are only getting a half share. So they're only getting 50%. For how long, I don't know. Maryland and Rutgers have only been getting a partial share. I don't know what that percentage is for like 10 years. I think they finally get a full share very soon. It might be this season. Or I think I read somewhere actually, and this is kind of funny, that USC and UCLA will get a full share before Maryland and Rutgers will. I can't completely confirm that, but it's close.
Yeah, I can see that just because of the prestige, but of course they've been there longer, so they have an argument. So are you telling me that Indiana and Purdue will get this same amount as Ohio State and Michigan?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yep.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
So the SEC deal starting in 2024 is I want to see the full numbers. $3 billion for how long is this contract? Wish they would write these articles in bullet points so I don't have to sift through paragraphs to find this. $3 billion for that can't be right for 10 years. They can't. No, they're not. They're making more than that.
That's it.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't have these numbers in front of me.
If the Pac-12, I mean, obviously hindsight, we can figure it all out. But let's say they signed with the ESPN for 30, the Pac-12 would get so much more exposure than the networks they were in, the Pac-12 network and Fox. And then that would have potentially brought in better recruits, right? Because they're seeing their teams on ESPN. I'm just that actually bums me out a lot. Just thinking about the Pac-12 falling apart. As far as college football, where does this go? Do we get to a point? Chip Kelly seemed really frustrated after he won the bowl game with the state of college football, and the way things were being handled with the Pac-12 and whatnot. Do you foresee potentially in the future coaches and parents just getting sick of, like, particularly these kids on the West Coast having to travel to Ohio State, to Maryland to see their kids play?
Yes. The last thing I'll say about your first point in the first part of the discussion is, I am no expert at these things, media rights deals, or some master negotiator by any stretch. But I did post videos and make suggestions that if I were the Pac-12, and I said this way before they were headed down well, they were already headed down a bad road, but they were still salvageable at the time, that I would have thrown myself at ESPN. And because, okay, the two things that I would have done would have been, number one, amongst other things, two things I would have done would have been, number one, they thought that they could allow the other conferences to cut their deals and then evaluate themselves against those deals and get a good read of how much they were worth. And when these networks were just going to trip over themselves to sign the SEC and the Big Ten, then the Pac-12 was going to say, well, this means that we're worth maybe not that much money, but we're worth quite a bit of money. However, I would have jumped in early and staked my ground. I would have thrown myself into it early and just secured territory on the TV map, time slots. I would have been the first to the party to say, even if we're going to cost ourselves a little bit of money, I'm willing to negotiate first, stake our ground, get our spots on the TV lineup with Fox, with ESPN, whoever's going to take us. So that's the first thing. They played the waiting game, and that burned them. And number two, once it got to a certain point, I would have been throwing all sorts of alternative lineups at ESPN and Fox. I would have been saying, we'll play weeknight games. We should be your Friday night game. We'll play Sunday games. I would think that even though nobody's going to compete with the NFL, there are certain windows of time that you could hit. Of course, you're in the Pac-12. You're not going to play a morning game because there's no way you can do that. But man, if you watch the NFL late in the afternoon on a Sunday afternoon, there's usually like 3 or 4 games, and they're typically pretty lousy games. Many of the time, I'm talking about near the end of the window. Like I'd be kicking off games at like 6:30, 7 o'clock on a Sunday night before the NFL games. I would have come up with all sorts of there are other things that I'm forgetting now that I proposed that if I would have been the Pac-12 to save my conference, I would have been willing to do. But to your second point about the athletes, absolutely. There's no reason for softball players to be traveling to Rutgers in Maryland from UCLA and from Oregon to play non-revenue sports when families and friends are going to be that want to be watching the game can't watch the game, and they're going to draw no one from the area to watch the game. It's just silly. I would like college athletics to be in a place where we keep all these same schools in the same conference for every sport, and these rivalries are maintained in every sport across the board. But if we've taken it to this point in football, I think that we should have some kind of model, and we've talked about it on here with various people, where Cal and Stanford are not running out to the East Coast to play softball and all these other Olympic sports where nobody's, again, the people that are interested and want to be watching the game can't watch the game because they're not going to travel across the country. And so nobody's showing up to a Stanford, North Carolina softball game at North Carolina that's going to be on the Stanford side, that they should just break off and have a regional league where athletes that go to Cal or Stanford, for example, they don't want to make these 5-hour flights. They can stay and they can play against Fresno State and Cal Poly and all these regional teams and stay close to home.
Do you foresee there being actual change, not just we're heading towards this, 2 super conferences and it's going to be like this for the next 10 years? Or do you foresee in maybe the next 5-6 years where someone says, okay, this is enough? I mean, it might be within the next 10, where someone says, hey, this is enough. Too much travel. Our athletes are suffering. Are we going to put the athletes for the first time ahead of the dollar bills? That might not be a great phrase, but will there be do you foresee in the next decade that they go, hey, you know what? We've gone too far.
Well,
Let's make things more reasonable.
I think you're half right. And this is the reason, and I might be wrong in this, but this is what I foresee, that what I just stated will eventually happen. And it will be stated that it's happening that way, meaning that football is going to break off. And maybe men's basketball stays with it. And we have these mega super conferences because they obviously also make a ton of money. But the Olympic sports, the non-revenue sports, then become regionalized. And the line that is going to be communicated to the public, to us, is going to be, well, we did this for the student athletes. This is what's best for them. And you know what? It is going to be best for them, but they're not going to do it for, well, I'm painting a broad brush. There are certainly people involved that want to do what's right and do what's best for the student athletes. But by and large, they're going to do it for economic reasons because they're going to lose money traveling these athletes all over the place constantly, not making any money, but losing money. So why do that? Well, right now, the way it's constructed, they have to do that because they got to keep these conferences together. And as long as you're Oregon, you're in the Big Ten Conference now. So you're going to play Maryland, you're going to play Rutgers, you're going to play all these schools. But I don't think that that's going to last.
Yeah, and actually, economics, the dollar bill might be actually the thing that you say kind of cures a lot of these issues. Like, as you mentioned, for the smaller sports, the road teams, the soccer team, the tennis team that just doesn't make money, basically.
Yeah, if you're in California and you're a soccer team traveling to the East Coast to play games when there are schools within 2 hours all over the place that you could be playing, it's just silliness. And you go out to Maryland and play a soccer game on a Saturday, and there's 48 people there, and nobody who's a family or friend of the Cal soccer team. They're a bad example because I mixed up conferences, but the Oregon soccer team can go to the game. It's just,
I mean, and think about it, Oregon versus Maryland. I'm sure it's on TV somewhere. I mean, nowadays everything is. But how many viewers are they going to get? The family members, 48 people watching for,
And
I
I
don't know.
understand why it's not being done now, because these moves are all driven by football. And then they have to figure out in the process of doing everything that they do because of football, how are we going to drag the other sports into it? I think it's going to take 2 or 3 years of bookkeeping and experience and headaches and issues with athletes that they're going to be like, okay, we've got to separate this.
Absolutely.
But they don't have time to do it now. They don't have time to say, okay, the Oregon football team's going to join and the men's basketball team's going to join the Big Ten, but everybody else, we're going to, they don't have time to figure out what conference they can join, who they can play on a regular basis. So they just kind of get dragged along.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Mark, thank you so much for taking my call. Hey, last thing, my random, I always have random questions. Does Belichick get hired for next season?
If he wants a job, I think he does get hired. If he still wants to coach, and I assume that he still does because he was still coaching the Patriots.
Well, I mean, Atlanta didn't go for him. Some of these other openings, I'm shocked. Not shocked, but somewhat surprised that he didn't get a job sooner.
Yeah,
and it seemed like Atlanta was. The rumor was that Atlanta was ready to sign him and then decided to go with another guy.
I think that he can still be a head coach in the NFL.
I would think so. I would think so. The greatest of all time.
Yes, you can make that argument.
Yeah. All right, Mark. Well, you have a great night. And man, it's a tough loss, but I'm really proud of the team.
Well, I appreciate it, Dr. C. Have a good night.
You as well. Bye.
All right.
Yeah. Hell of a well, it turned out to be a good one. Congratulations to the Kansas City Taylor Swifts. Players going to play, and haters going to hate. But it's
That's what's going on.
Tough to pick on the Chiefs. But it was a really boring game for so long. And you thought in the third quarter that was your well, you have something with liking low scoring football games, Mark. I think that's
I don't
more in
have
your
this affinity
wheelhouse.
for watching wide receivers just run aimlessly down the field easily. Like, I don't think there was poor execution on the offensive side besides some penalties.
You had a couple turnovers.
Oh yeah, there was some sloppy play early,
Right.
with a couple fumbles, but I didn't see. Yeah, I equate poor offensive play in the manner that we're talking to poor quarterback play. They're missing their targets downfield or making bad decisions and or dropped passes. I didn't see either one of those things on any kind of regular basis.
Well, I mean, I don't know. At 10-3, I thought there was some sloppiness out there with the turnovers. There were some bad penalties. Yeah, I mean, neither team. Now, some of that was great defense. I mean, there for a while, Kansas City could not block the San Francisco defensive line. Shout out to Chase Young, finally looking decent early in that game. By the way, Mark, I think we had some 2019 flashbacks there of Chase Young. And then Bosa was making some plays there too. They had a hard time blocking him, early in the game. It's amazing how Kansas City has had like these last two Super Bowls. They've had those one or two plays that has kind of flipped the game around. Last year I thought Philadelphia handed them a touchdown in that first half. The only bad play that pretty much Hurts had in the game was that fumble. And then this year, the special teams mistake, that I think just totally changed the football game. Because to that point, I thought even though San Francisco's offense wasn't doing much, they had to feel pretty good where they were at 10-3 in that third quarter.
I had a bad feeling the entire game. Once San Francisco took some level of control of this game from the opening kick, where they were outplaying, they were moving the ball, Kansas City was doing nothing, and mistakes were being made on both sides. Kansas City did obviously fumble inside the 10, but the game was still sitting at 10-3. I had a bad feeling once we got past a certain point in the second quarter. And when I say a bad feeling, I mean a bad feeling for San Francisco, thinking they've wasted some opportunities here. They've had control of this game. Mahomes has done nothing. I haven't looked at the drive chart, but I know that the yardage totals were horrendous for Kansas City for a large portion of the game. Travis Kelce had caught nothing, and it's still a one-score game. Like, at that point, I thought, this is not going to last like this.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's, Kansas City's kind of basically become a defensive team this year.
Yeah.
I mean, and to your kind of point, which you were just referencing, I mean, football overall, in both college and the NFL, the defenses are winning out these maybe last few years. Obviously, defensive-oriented teams won it the last few years in college. And, this year, scoring was down in the NFL. And, Kansas City, which was an offensive team early in the Mahomes years, basically was a defensive team this year.
Yes.
And, I mean, I thought one of the key plays by their defense, and they made more than a few in this game, was when Mahomes threw the pick to start that second half, and they got a 3-and-out. That was huge. Because San Francisco should have at least gotten 3 points there.
Yeah.
And, that was a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up the numbers right now.
Yeah.
And San Francisco had 382 yards of total offense. Kansas City had 455. And shoot, I can't remember the numbers I saw sometime early in the second half, and Kansas City's offensive numbers were dismal.
Well, Well, San Francisco did go into a shell offensively in that third quarter. They got shut down like 3 or 4 straight drives. Yeah, I think even before the fumble, had 3 drives where they were shut down in that third quarter. I think they went 3 and out, at least 2 times 6 out, but maybe even 3. And sure enough, I mean, you catch that one break, and that was pretty much it. I did think that. The one of the key play is I knew when Purdy didn't convert that 3rd and 4 at the end when they had a chance to maybe kill the rest of the clock and go down
Yes.
and kick a field goal to win it. You
That
had
was
a
one of the-
feeling. What's that?
Yeah, they dialed up the blitz, and the
Yep.
rusher was right in his face and batted it down. That was enormous, of course.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's the play of the game. Because if they get that first down there, they're going to be able to burn clock, and Mahomes ain't going to have much time left. So,
Yeah, Mahomes had about $150 as it was, but if they get a first
Right.
down, he either doesn't have that much less time, but he's got no timeouts, probably
Right.
is the way it's going to play. Or if they're able to get another first down after that, then they're running down the clock and kicking the game-winning field goal.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Reed's going to have to burn his timeouts at that point, if they get the first down there to give him back, any time. Although I'm still frustrated. I took the under of 47. I don't know how a game that's 10-3 in the third quarter ends up pushing. I mean, geez.
Well, overtime, that's
Yeah, I know.
our buddy Steve Merrill has pointed out the percentage of games in pro and college that go to overtime that you have to consider that whatever that percentage is, 7% or whatever the number is, that if you take the under, you're most likely going to lose if the game goes to overtime.
Well, 15 years ago, San Francisco would have won the Super Bowl with that opening drive. Before
Yeah.
the rules were changed.
Sure. Yeah.
Before the rules were changed. But hey, more rules to, lean towards the offensive side of the ball, which is
Well,
what the
this
NFL
is this is fair now. That wasn't fair.
Statistically, well, maybe this was a long time ago. You wouldn't have thought that many times the team that won the quarter flip always won the game. That wasn't always. I mean, now maybe I was looking at that, before the offensive football went through the roof. But there was a period of time where it wasn't a for sure thing if you
Well,
won the quarter.
it better not be for sure, but it's still
Yeah.
was a huge advantage. You only needed a field goal. Shoot, these field goal kickers hit 55-yarders like they're nothing.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing that's an advantage nowadays. Field goal kicking is well. That's the other thing that, by the way, the other big play in the game, Mark, we didn't talk about the missed extra point.
Yes.
Good job, Team Up North kicker for hooking that one, huh?
I knew that was coming next.
I had to go there. If he made the game-winning field goal, everybody in this chat would have been going off about how great he was and he's a legendary kicker and all this.
When he hit the go-ahead field goal, I thought, oh, we're going to be hearing about that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they wouldn't have lived that one down. But yeah, because Reed would have had to have gone for that 4th down instead of kicking the field goal to tie it at 16. So, I mean, it definitely changed strategy as far as that goes. Boy, if you're Kyle Shanahan, how do you feel right now? Man, that's 2 tough ones.
Yeah. He had a lead in the 4th quarter of the other Super Bowl.
He was on the wrong side of 28-3 against Brady when he was Atlanta's OC too.
Well, that was either his stupidity or Dan Quinn's stupidity in terms of just the play clock. It's been statistically proven they could have been just as aggressive because the defense after the game was, well, this is the kind of team we are. We're aggressive.
Sure.
Be as aggressive as you want, but run the play clock down.
Sure. Well, yeah, a friend of mine was saying about this years ago. With as many games that are decided in the NFL, and I think 60% of the games in the NFL are decided by 7 points or less. I mean, more games are lost on clock management than anything. I mean, that's what the Patriots were so good at for years. It's situational football. Just situational football, knowing, how to utilize the clock and things of that nature. Proving once again more games are lost than they are won.
Yep.
So great statement from Mahomes, by the way. I just, I don't know if he can catch Brady, but he's going to make a heck of a run at him, man.
Seems like it.
Well, the only quarterback to beat him is Joe Burrow that year, a couple years ago, in a
Yeah.
game that I still think Kansas City blew that game, by the way. You go back and watch that championship game they lost to Cincinnati, they kind of blew that game.
And Mahomes, people may
Yeah.
not want to hear this. He could have another Super Bowl championship. They really got ripped off against the Patriots the first championship game they played.
Oh, you're talking about the offside thing?
Yeah, that's I'm not saying that the official did anything wrong, but that play was completely a non-football play, a non-impactful call to the play. Brady threw a pick that ended the game.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, I thought Ford did jump offside on that play.
Well, he did.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying they got lucky. I'm
Oh,
saying
yeah.
Brady got lucky.
Sure. Well, but I mean, what are the handful of plays today that we kind of, the pendulum swings the other way? I mean, this is why we love the NFL. This is why I make the case for the NFL over college, because 60% of the games in the NFL are decided by 7 points or less. I don't see that in college a lot, Mark. I mean, the games are far more competitive and the game is played at a higher level. That's my case. And it's a pretty good one on why I, kind of prefer
Well,
the
it's an
NFL.
ironclad case.
Well, yeah.
On the field, nobody can argue that college football is better than the NFL. Just by definition, they are professionals who came from the college ranks, except we
Right.
took the top 5% of them. Of course, they're better. They're better coaches, they're better players. Even if they're the same players, they're just better at that point in their career. So even the players that are the same players are better players as 25-year-olds than they were as 19-year-olds.
Well, I was also using that to make my statement that draws me more to the NFL than college. Makes, you know what I mean? Those two facts.
Yeah.
Just as my own personal preference.
Yeah. And I get that. And for most of my life, I loved the NFL and absorbed it constantly and knew exactly what was going on and all that business. But now there's, to me, one thing that draws me to college football is there's a certain spontaneity to it that when I'm watching an NFL game,
Yeah.
it almost seems like every game I'm watching is the same game.
I don't know. Now, you'd still see, I would still watch a meaningless NFL game. I mean, I'll watch Arizona versus Seattle. You would watch, let's say, Minnesota versus Iowa over.
Oh, absolutely.
Over
Well, yeah.
well, you got to cover the sport, but I would watch Arizona versus Seattle over Minnesota versus Iowa or
Well,
something.
I will say this, that when there was Thursday night football before it went to Amazon, because now I got to admit, even though we're like 3 years into this Amazon deal,
Yeah.
I completely forget that there's an NFL game on Thursday nights.
Well, go ahead.
But back when it was on the NFL Network, CBS, whoever had it for all those years, I watched the NFL game over watching college football on Thursday night. I watched the NFL game.
Well, see, the thing about it is I think most of the, I mean, poor Herb Street now, Michaels get Garbaggio football games most of the time.
Well, it's always been like that. The Thursday night game's always been horrible.
Well, see, I think that that's a case that can be made about scheduling too. I mean, there's a few things with the NFL that I think that they always should have considered. First of all, I was always okay with the 16 game schedule. I didn't, and I mentioned to you before. I mean,
Yeah.
it lasted for 43 years and nobody batted an eye.
Yeah, there's no reason to be adding a 17th game. First of all, it's just an odd number.
Right.
Secondly, what's that proving? What's that deciding that wasn't decided after 16 games? Thirdly, for as much as the argument is made, and it's been made tonight, what's wrong with more football? More football is always good. A Super Bowl being played in mid-February? Really?
Listen, I was okay when the NFL ended its season at the last week in January. I could have lived with that. I never necessarily had any regrets. It worked out okay. In my own personal view. Maybe I was just so used to it after a while, I guess. But Yeah, I mean, see, I always thought with the injury factor too, Mark. I mean, adding another game doesn't necessarily help the cause. Playing football in a shortened week, like we just talked about on Thursday nights, doesn't help the cause. The other thing too that the NFL might want to consider, somebody had put this out there, is maybe eventually going to 2 bye weeks. I wonder if they'd ever do that.
And you're going to push the season a week later.
Well, I think you'd have to adjust the preseason or do some things like that. First of all, they should start the NFL season the first week in September instead of the second weekend in September. I don't know why they do that.
Yeah. Well, college football is glad that they don't,
That's true.
for one thing, because college football gets a full weekend in with no NFL competition. So they play Sunday games and Monday games. Yeah. So yeah, the NFL, it's comical that at the same time that it seemed like the discussion about head trauma and injury
Right.
and long-term injuries was at its peak was the time that they
Yep.
had a 17th football game.
That's exactly right. Let's speak out of both sides of our mouth, right, Mark? Let's add another game to the schedule. Let's play football games on a shortened week and see what that does for the injury factor in the most violent sport out there. When NFL stands for not for long when it comes to your career, and an average NFL career lasts, what, 2.5 to 3 years or something. I
Well,
mean,
I'll
come
make
on.
a point about that in a second, but they not only added, of course, the extra game, they added an extra playoff team. Therefore, they added an extra game in the playoffs
Right.
in both conferences. Now, in terms of the longevity of an NFL career, I think from an injury standpoint, that gets overblown, and this is
Mm,
why.
that's true.
If you look at the NFL, you got 53-man rosters, you got 32 teams, that's roughly 1,600 players. And then you hold an NFL draft
Mm,
where 260 some players are drafted. Not all of them make it, but there are 30, 40, 50, whatever the number of free agents that make it. So you're roughly bringing like 280 new players into the league. So regardless of the injury or the health status of the players in the league, about 280 of them are getting displaced every year by somebody who's cheaper.
that's true. Yeah, I mean, some guys are just fading away just because they're replaced by somebody else.
Yeah,
I mean,
they've been in the
your
league for
point's
6
valid.
years. They're not that good of a player. They play on special teams. They're a backup outside linebacker, and they make a couple million a year, and the rookie can make 700 grand and be just as good, if not better.
Yeah, it's not because you've had like 45 knee surgeries
Yeah.
or something, right?
The injuries are certainly a factor in that number, but I think that gets overplayed. I think I've heard a lot of people just say immediately, yeah, they only get to play 2.5 years because it's such a violent sport. Well, that's not entirely true.
Right. Well, I mean, some of the changes are good, some of the changes are bad. I know we talk about it with college ad nauseum. I mean, we've done the discussion on NIL more than a few times, and have my misgivings about the portal. Um, I do think that, and then the other two big things that are coming up this year is the reconfiguration of the conferences, and then the 12-team playoff. So, see, I still think that the 12-team playoff can be good, even though we both agree 8 is the ideal number, though.
Yeah, it's
Hey,
certainly going to be different. It's going to be fun. It's going to be, for as much as I don't like all this realignment, it
yeah.
is going to create some matchups that, Ohio State schedule, pick a team, any team, and they've got a more interesting schedule than they ever have before.
Well, and most to me, there's nothing like a big time matchup in college football. That's the one thing about college I'll say is because you only get a few of them. And I know you always have looked at non-conference scheduling and things like that over the years, and I agree with you on that. I don't think there's anything like, and that's because you see so few of them. That's why I always, you kind of cling on to the ones that you do have and you do see.
Yeah. What Baltimore and San Francisco played this year, right? That was probably the best intra-conference matchup in the NFL this year, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Right.
and so it had a little bit more juice than other NFL games, but it wasn't that big a deal. Whereas when Texas goes to Michigan this fall and
Yeah.
other games like that, that's special. It's a big deal.
Yeah, that's why I said for those years, like when Ohio State played Texas or an Oklahoma or somebody like that in non-conference, it was cool. I enjoyed that. You
Yeah.
know. Hey, last thing, I wanted to get your thoughts on the Kelly hire, Mark. What was your overall? I mean, you cut one video on Bill O'Brien. Now, would you have to cut another video on Chip Kelly?
Yeah. So as I've got on the screen here, Zach Smith's going to stop by tomorrow afternoon, and we're just going to go ahead and go live. That's going to be at 2:30 Eastern time because I'm interested to get his thoughts, of course. Because the more I thought about Bill O'Brien, I thought that that was just about as ideal as it could be. And that's not because Bill O'Brien's the mastermind of offensive football and just the perfect play caller, but I thought with his experience that it's been obvious to me over the last couple of years that Ryan Day does not want to give up play calling. So for him to do it, he had to completely trust that individual. And so that seemed on the surface to be an ideal match. Now, working with your friends can have its benefits or can maybe not turn out to be as good as it could be. Chip Kelly, from what I understand, isn't necessarily the most the person that is the most amicable to work with or the most flexible person. And you suddenly have the person that's been a subordinate and being the underling in Ryan Day. Now he's running the show and Chip Kelly's working for Ryan Day. That's, of course, what he wants. He wants to get out of the head coaching business, at least on the college level. So I'm not anticipating problems, but it's a different dynamic than what they would have had with Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, I mean, one kind of comment on Kelly, one kind of comment on the overall situation. As I mentioned with the overall situation before that they're dealing with, I still think whomever Day's hiring is basically going to be running his offense anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted kind of and I think some fans talked about this, the adult in the room, a person that's been a coach before, a person that's a good offensive mind, that's called plays before, basically a Kevin Wilson type. Because Kevin Wilson, was a coach before. He had called plays. He's run good offenses in the past. That's kind of what I wanted. A person that's designed good offenses, called the plays, maybe been a coach in the past. That's why I also talked about Moorhead.
Yep.
Although, could you lure him away from Akron U? That who knows about that? That's a joke, but
Yeah.
But I will say though, the one thing about Kelly is, did you always hear that for years that his offense kind of got outdated because a lot of people took it in, that was like something that I had heard, like how he was so cutting edge with Oregon all those years with those early Oregon teams, and then people thought that it kind of got outdated after a while.
I think that the idea of outdated offense is a little overblown. I
Okay.
think when offenses aren't effective, then suddenly they don't throw the ball enough, they don't space people out. If anybody watched Jimbo Fisher's offense, no, it hasn't been good for quite some time. I think it could use a little more creativity, but I think a lot of people equate passing the football with it being a modern offense and running the football with it being antiquated, and that's just not true. I don't know that Chip Kelly's offense got outdated as much as it went from being cutting edge and completely unique and difficult to prepare for because it was so much different than it just becoming what everybody else's offense was.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I heard is other people kind of stole his concepts and
Yeah.
ideas. Right. Yeah. All right, my friend. Well, another NFL season in the books. I'm sure somewhere DeReal is celebrating right now. He got on here earlier and did his victory dance, I'm
Oh,
sure.
absolutely.
Yeah. So we're going to have to wait for USFL football next. Oh, no, spring football. April, we get spring football. So that'll
Yes,
be
we do.
fun. All right.
All right, David.
All right, Mark. You take care of yourself, my friend. We'll
We
see you, buddy.
appreciate it. Amazon link in the description section of all the videos, including this one. And here's the deal with the Amazon link. It doesn't cost you a penny. This is the one way that you can contribute to the channel without it costing you a penny. And the use of it is transparent. It works just like the link that you use now. Amazon is going to recognize that you have an account. There it is. You're just using a different link. Voila. It's completely transparent. Use the Amazon link in the description section. All right, here's our rundown at the Voice of College Football tomorrow. I'm going to be on here live with Zach Smith at 2:30 Eastern Time. Of course, we're going to talk Ohio State. We're going to talk Michigan. We're going to talk college football. Whatever comes to my mind. So again, we will be live Monday at 2:30 Eastern Time with Zach Smith. Then we will be live for a Michigan special edition at 6 Eastern Time. So that's going to be right here as well. Michigan Live, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Join John D'Adamo for the Ocho at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And then at 11, you will catch me, Matt Zemek, and Tim Prangley over on the USC channel with our Trojan Conquest Live show. So 2:30 Eastern, Zach Smith Live right here with me. 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Michigan Wolverines Live Special Edition. 8 o'clock Ocho with John D'Adamo. And then at 11 p.m. Eastern Time over on the USC channel, we will have our Trojan Conquest Live show with all of you right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Hope you enjoyed your NFL season. We now say goodbye to the NFL as we do with college football until late August. Feel good that the college season starts a few more days earlier than it typically does. Florida State and Georgia Tech play in Dublin on August 24th. So it's a long summer away, but enjoy your summer. Be here for rankings and ratings and all the things that we do. We're in the middle of our TV ratings series. We're going to drop the Big Ten video early tomorrow, and then we'll knock out the SEC. We got a lot of requests for other things that we need to compare in terms of the TV ratings, and those are things that we've done in the past. So hang on, we'll get to them. I appreciate the suggestions, but all the suggestions we've received are items and components and angles that we've already laid out in previous seasons. I just haven't produced those videos yet. We're going to do our coaches rankings. So we will do our 2024 version of coaches rankings, a way too early top 20. I'll do since it's not really a way too early top 25 by measurements of way too early top 25s that come out right when the season's over. We'll call it our spring edition of our way too early top 25. So we'll do a spring edition top 25 that actually makes sense as well. And all sorts of other good stuff we've got planned right here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you Monday, 2:30 Eastern, live right here. Thank you.